Hey Yakadacho! A bunch of you asked for tutorial videos on animating and drawing and stuff, so here is one. I'm going to show you the full process I would go through when animating a new kind of run cycle. The first thing I would do when animating a new walk or run cycle is grab a sketchbook and the internet and search up some pictures of the animal and then sketch it. The second thing I like to do is I go and get more internet and look up the skeleton and muscles of the animal. I like to draw the skeleton and muscles roughly, not particularly exactly, but this is just to show you where you can bend the body and where you can't bend the body. The third thing I do is I get even more internet and I look up videos of the animal running, because not all quadrupeds run the same or have the same bones. Obviously. So now is when animators start to appear a bit crazy, because a lot of us do this. I watched the video for a bit, mainly focusing on 4 things. The shape of the spine as it walks, the order the feet are placed down, when the hips and shoulders go up and down, and the movement of the head and tail, but that last one can be added later, that's not too important right now. And then a lot of animators do this, professional animators as well, it's not just us amateurs that do this. We get on the floor and we walk like the animal on all 4s. And wait, let me explain before you call me crazy, alright? It is the absolute best way to understand the movement you are making and the best way to make sure you focus on the order of the feet, because that is one of the hardest parts of a run or walk cycle with more than 2 legs. Okay, so now we actually get to set to work animating. Normally when I start a new walk or run cycle, I will just sketch out the character standing straight, no movement, on a layer. Underneath the layer I'll animate on, just to try and stop any joints from morphing or any sizes from becoming out of proportion. And I'll spend a little bit of time making sure everything's just the right size and shape and that it's easily readable so that I will not get confused, because that happens very easily for me. I won't always make it neat and tidy, but sometimes if I think it helps, I will go over with a thin line and I will make it tidy and clear and easy to read. This is the time when you want to do any reshaping, resizing of things, and I always make sure that I can see the joint lines underneath, so the lines in the front and back legs that show where the main bones are, and I try and make sure I have a circle for the front end, the back end, and the head, because those are what I use to shape the rest of my frames. So to animate this, I went onto YouTube. I found a documentary about wolves. There's hundreds out there, most of them are about Yellowstone, I don't know why, but Yellowstone seems to be a favourite, so I found one of these random Yellowstone documentaries, skimmed through it until I found a shot of a wolf running I liked, and then paused on that shot and just watched it repeatedly as I was animating this to get my main poses. I started with a pose that I thought I could manipulate quite easily, in case I need to come back and change it. The first pose is often the one that I find I need to change. And then I just went through straight ahead animation, so not so much keyframing, straight ahead animation, putting in the other frames of this run. Run cycles are generally easier than walk cycles because there's less order to when the feet are placed down. With walk cycles, generally there is a very, very specific order that the animals put their feet down. Run cycles, they can send their limbs flying, change which foot leads. They go all over the place with run cycles, and it makes it a lot easier to do them because people will not notice mistakes as obviously. I animated this specific one on 2s, so on 12 frames per second, rather than on 24. That's partly because it saves time, and partly because it didn't really need to be on 24 to look reasonably smooth. So at the moment this is the most bunched up pose. This is when the wolf is at its smallest and most hunched up, and it's gathering all of that energy to push out in another long stride. So it's always worth going slightly to the extreme with these things, really rounding the back, perhaps more than they would realistically, and really gathering the feet together so that they all cross over and it looks very small. And then in the next frame we're starting to lift upwards so that we can push out into another long stride. I'm just kind of messing around with the tail. I'm not particularly concentrating on it. The tail's not that important here. Quite often I won't even put the tail in. I'll go back afterwards and add the tail in to give it a nice wave motion. So now we're starting to push far forward in preparation to reach out and take another long stride. This isn't particularly a sprint, it's more of a loping stride, like I think I took it from when a wolf was hunting. So it's not particularly sprinting, it's loping, just keeping up. Not that fast, but very, very good running through snow. I think this particular shot, the wolf was running through snow, which is why it's so upright. In the next frame, the head is starting to come down a bit, and the legs are starting to reach further forwards. I'm filling in the gaps now to get back to our first frame, and there is actually one too many frames in this. It moves with a slightly odd timing and the back feet are on the ground just a little bit too long and the front feet are in the air just a little bit too long. So this is my last frame that I did straight ahead. I'm testing it here. It looks a bit funny because it's sped up. I'm just doing a last in-between in here to fill a gap to see if that will fix the timing issue I had. I can tell you now, it didn't fix the timing issue. Parts of it were still too slow. I'm just going through and in-betweening certain areas where they look like there are really big gaps. And I'm messing around with the tail to try and make the tail look like it has a better motion, because the tail wasn't moving quite right either. And now you can see there that the timing is really funny. It's much too slow coming down. The back feet are on the ground for far too long. And so then a little bit later I go in to fix this by messing around with the frame order, changing the legs. I'm just going to time-lapse this with some music while I mess around with the frames to make them fit better, because there's not a lot to say at this point. So now I found that adding in more frames has not fixed my timing issue, so I am going over it with a different colour, much more tidily, and I'm deciding which frames I'm going to cut out, so where I need to adjust things. Because some frames I wanted to keep the front legs but not the back legs, and other frames I wanted to keep the back legs but not the front legs, so I just had to mess around with where I moved things using the same frames. Here I decided I wanted it to stretch more, there wasn't enough of a stretch. There would be a lot more of a stretch in a sprinting wolf. This is a Lope, so it doesn't particularly stretch out that much, but I decided it still wasn't enough, so just pulled the back legs out of it. Changed the shape of the spine to fit my needs rather than the realistic needs more. This is when I arched the back even more, more so than a wolf would realistically, but so I go over in a different colour so that it's very easy to see where my new stuff and my old stuff is. This is the finished result. After editing all the frames and taking out the ones that I didn't need, this is what we're left with. So that's it! I really hope you enjoyed this new kind of video. Please comment below on what other animation tutorials you would really like to see. You can follow my Twitter and DeviantArt accounts to see sneak peeks of Dawning Age episode 3, vote on what tutorial I should make next, and see other projects I'm working on. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and I will see you soon.